Douglas Lee Williams is an absolute NFL legend. As a Super Bowl MVP and champion with the Washington Redskins in Super Bowl 22, he cemented his name into the legacy of the game. Today, he is a senior advisor to the Washington Commanders. But this video on football lore hopes to give an overview and respect to the legend and pioneer of the game, Doug Williams. Doug Williams was born in August of 1955 in Zachary, Louisiana. His family consisted of his mother Laura, his dad Robert, and 7 other siblings. The family struggled for money, but prided itself on its faith and closeness. Doug immediately stood out as an athlete and set high school records with his performance his senior year as a quarterback. At the time, however, in the early 1970s, few Division I colleges were willing to take a look at an African-American quarterback. Times have since changed, but at the time, Black athletes were primarily forced to play football at historically Black colleges exclusively. Doug would end up playing for one of these schools in Grambling State University, starting in 1973. In 1973, Williams was redshirted, but blossomed into a star during his sophomore season. He would lead the university to an incredible 36-7 record as a starter. His year in 1977 especially stands out, considering he would rack up 3,200 yards from scrimmage, 38 touchdown passes, and average almost 9 yards per play. This performance put him in contention for the prestigious Heisman Trophy Award. Even being in a finalist is a great honor, but he would finish 4th in voting, behind Earl Campbell, Terry Miller, and Ken McAfee. Even though Williams had been a Heisman Trophy finalist, a role in the NFL was not a guarantee for someone of his complexion at the time. Williams had begun to work on his master's degree alongside preparing for the draft because he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to play football professionally. Despite being one of the best college quarterbacks in the country, only Joe Gibbs of the Buccaneers would visit Williams to scout him. Every other NFL team pretended that Williams did not exist as a prospect. Joe Gibbs would return to Tampa and let everyone know they had a future star in Doug. Tampa would select him with the 17th overall pick in the 1978 NFL Draft, and this made Williams the first Black quarterback to be drafted in the first round. At the time, Tampa was breaking down barriers in terms of what fans thought a quarterback could be. His athleticism and ability to create plays out of the pocket occasionally stood out. His arm strength also had Tampa fans excited, considering their previous quarterbacks had the arm strength of a Girl Scout. The franchise at the time was in a state of disrepair, but Williams would add new life into the team. The first year in the NFL was a transition period for Williams. He started in just 10 games and only won 4 of those, but he showed flashes of an elite ability and was surrounded by a terrible team. He threw for a little over 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions, but compared to every other quarterback on the roster, was clearly the option for the starting role going forward. 1979 would cement Williams as a star in the NFL when he would double his production on the field and also lead the Buccaneers on a playoff run that a few years ago fans would have thought impossible. He led the team all the way to the NFC Conference Championship game, but they would sadly fall short to the Los Angeles Rams. All of the fans and coaching staff in Tampa at this point were sold on Doug Williams being elite, and the 1980 season would be even better. The 1980 season, he threw for 3,300 yards and 20 touchdowns. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He led them back to the playoffs, but considering the owner of the Bucs was known for not wanting to pay any players, the lack of a supporting staff didn't allow him to compete on another deep run. That cheap owner, being unwilling to pay players, will be important later in the story. 1981 would be the peak of Williams' career in Tampa. He had a 3,500-yard season and 19 touchdowns to just 14 interceptions. This play was incredible and firmly reinforced the fact that Black quarterbacks could be consistent starters in the league at a high level. The 1982 season was shortened due to a player strike, but Williams would perform at a similar level to what he had played previously. And considering it was a contract year, he was expecting a big payday in the offseason. Williams had been paid insanely unfairly up to this point. Even after leading the Buccaneers to the NFC Championship in 1979 and turning the franchise from a joke to a contender, he was being paid just $120,000 at the time. That was the lowest for starting quarterbacks in the league by far, and was actually less than more than half of the backup quarterbacks at the time. Imagine being an elite Pro Bowl level quarterback and getting paid less than a crappy backup. Doug wanted a $600,000 contract, which was more than in line for the level of play he was displaying. It wasn't going to break any records, but it was going to pay him like a starting quarterback gets paid. The owner of the Bucs, Hugh Culverhouse, refused to pay that salary to Williams and instead demanded that he accept a $400,000 deal. This was incredibly insulting considering his level of play and the fact that his wife had just passed away months before. Williams, still ridden with grief from losing his wife, decided that he would rather sit out the next year than accept an insulting deal, and that is exactly what he did. This upset the fans in Tampa greatly and destroyed the trajectory of the team. They wouldn't even be back to the playoffs for over a decade. The head coach was even begging the owner to pay Williams what he was asking for because of how important he was to the success of the team. Williams sat out the 1983 season and decided that he would go back to playing football with the USFL instead of the NFL. He signed a contract with the Outlaws that was worth $4 million and instantly made him one of the highest paid players in football. This was a huge difference in how he was treated in the NFL. And to this day, he says the owners William Tatham and Bill Tatham were the first owners who treated him like a human instead of a piece of cattle. That respect prompted Williams to play incredibly well, and he led the USFL in passing that year. His second year in Arizona was even better, and he led the league in passing again. This performance attracted the attention of all the NFL teams who needed a quarterback after the USFL shut down following the 1985 season. He decided to return to the NFL and reunite with the one coordinator who had always believed in him, Joe Gibbs in Washington. At the time, the Redskins had a starting quarterback in Jay Schroeder, but when Schroeder was knocked out due to injury, Williams would step in and perform. The first few seasons saw Jay and Doug going back and forth over who would lead the team, but when the Redskins qualified for the playoffs in 1987, Doug was announced as the starting quarterback for the playoffs. This run would go down as one of the best runs in playoff history. As a quarterback, the first game was an extremely close contest against the Chicago Bears, where the Redskins would squeak out a close 21-17 victory. They were down 14-0 at one point, but Williams would lead a comeback to advance to the NFC Championship game against the Vikings. This game was a total defensive battle, but the Redskins managed to win with a score of 17-10. Doug Williams actually had the game-winning drive in this game and proved to everyone who had been doubting the choice to start him in the playoffs wrong. He had led a team to the Super Bowl, and the owner of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is rumored to have cried himself to sleep that night. Their Super Bowl matchup would be against the Denver Broncos. Going into the matchup, the Broncos were favored to win, mainly because analysts thought Elway would be better than Williams in the big game. This wasn't meant to be an insult to Williams. Elway was coming off an MVP season, and Williams hadn't even been the starter for most of the NFL season. Doug was never the one who shied away from an underdog situation, but the odds would become even more stacked against him. The night before playing the Super Bowl, Williams had a dental emergency where he was forced to undergo an emergency root canal operation for a tooth infection. This reaffirmed the choice that the Broncos would easily glide to a victory. Even if Williams played, he would clearly not be able to perform at a similar level. Doug was not one to let situations like this impede his goals, and he wasn't going to let some silly tooth ruin his opportunity. The Broncos jumped out to an early lead when Elway scored just 2 minutes into the game, but Doug Williams would go on to have an elite performance, going 18 for 29, racking up 340 yards and 4 touchdown passes. The Redskins defense also shut down any hope the Broncos had of establishing a passing game, and they secured an incredible 42-10 victory in the Super Bowl. Obviously, with that performance, Doug Williams was the MVP of the game and became the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl and be the MVP. Doug was riding high after the success in the postseason in 1988. But unfortunately, he would suffer an injury the following year, and another Redskins legend, Mark Rypien, would get a chance to start. Rypien would play incredibly well and would eventually beat out Williams for the starting job. There was no bad blood between the two. In fact, there was even merchandise sold that indicated the two were okay with either man winning the starting job. Williams played one more year as Rypien's backup, but when he made the Pro Bowl, Williams realized that at this point in his career, there was a small chance he would be able to win the starting role. The Redskins also were not thrilled about having to pay a backup quarterback $1 million a year salary, and when they signed a cheaper backup in the offseason, they decided to release Williams. After his departure from the NFL, he went into television, where he worked as a football analyst for many years. Even though television came with a nice salary, it wasn't the game he loved, and he decided to try coaching at the high school level in 1991. He had moderate success and would continue to coach at the high school level, even knocking a teenage Peyton Manning out of the high school playoffs in 1993. His role as a high school coach allowed him to help shape young players who were from a similar community and socioeconomic standing as himself. He speaks often about how powerful this experience was, and how he never regrets the opportunity he had to help young men reach their full potential as athletes and stay on the right path. The community of Zachary is a community that lacks opportunity, so the ability for him to give back truly helped keep some kids in the community on the right path. He got his first shot at a college coaching job in 1994 when he became the running back coach of the Navy football team. He also would be an offensive coordinator for the Scottish Claymores of NFL Europe and a scout for the Jaguars in 1995. This experience made him an extremely well-rounded head coach candidate because he had first-hand experience in almost every role on the coaching staff. While many former players coast their way into a head coaching role without much experience, Williams made sure that he understood each part of the job, from scouting to personnel management. This allowed him to build an entire culture around his personal experiences and contributed to the success he would have later as a head coach. This experience led to him getting a head coaching job with Morehouse College in 1997, and that success immediately was leveraged into a head coaching position at his alma mater of Grambling State University. He was able to lead the Tigers to an incredibly impressive 3 straight conference titles before he made the jump to the NFL as a personnel executive. Although he had great success at the college level, when the NFL called and offered an executive position, he had to answer the call. He took over as a personnel executive in 2002 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He would stay in that position for 7 years before being promoted to director of scouting for the team in 2009. After just a year in the role, he would change to a job as the general manager of the Virginia Destroyers of the UFL. After just a year in the UFL, he would decide to return to the head coaching position at Grambling University until finally leaving in 2013. Since then, he has worked as a personnel executive for the Washington Redskins and was actually promoted to the senior vice president of player development in 2020. He maintains a crucial advisory role to the team president and is involved in day-to-day operations for the Commanders franchise. Beyond just head coaching, he also decided to co-found the Black College Football Hall of Fame with James Harris in 2009. The location in Atlanta has become a popular yearly event and tourist attraction where Black college athletes are honored for their contributions to the community and the game of football. This allows him to help other athletes who have been in his position build their legacy and also add respect to the HBCU football game. He was able to keep his position even through the ownership changes that happened in Washington, and it will be interesting to see how he helps sculpt the new culture and environment for the Commanders. As a quarterback that brought a Super Bowl championship to the city, he has a special connection to the city and wants the franchise to succeed, not just to keep his job. Doug Williams' family has also been blessed with extreme athletic talent. His sons both played collegiate sports. One son, Adrian, played basketball for Brown University, and the other played for his father at Grambling State. His daughter, Laura, will be playing for the University of Southern California basketball team in the upcoming NCAA season. Even beyond his immediate family, his nephew Johnny also played in the NFL for a period. The legacy of the Williams family lives on in athletics nationwide. His legacy leaves a complicated impact on the game. He did shatter racial barriers in the NFL at a time where Black quarterbacks were thought to have been inferior, but that same prejudice also kept him out of the league some years later and forced him to the USFL. Had this discrimination not taken place, who knows that Heights Williams and Tampa Bay could have reached together. The decision to not pay the player shortly after the passing of his wife will always leave a question mark in regards to what could have been in his career. While he is not in the NFL Hall of Fame, debate continues whether or not he deserves a spot. His career statistics are not necessarily what we are used to when it comes to Hall of Fame status. With just 16,000 passing yards and 100 touchdowns to 93 interceptions, he doesn't have the statistical backing to really make a case to be in Canton. However, his position as a historically important quarterback in the game has some pushing for his addition soon. We at Football Lore feel that while he didn't necessarily have the longest career, his impact on the game is undeniable. Outside of the NFL, he is a member of the College Football Hall of Fame and also has a street named after him at the campus of Grambling State, where he attended college and coached football. The most recent updates regarding Williams and the game of football are mostly centered around him attempting to rebuild the Washington Commanders franchise, which has fallen into total mediocrity in recent decades. In a recent interview, he mentioned that he still thinks of his Super Bowl 22 victory often and how its impact resonates, especially when people speak to him about how much it meant to them to watch him win that Super Bowl. It helped spread awareness of the game and impacted millions of young athletes around the nation who were watching Doug Williams create history in real time. If you are enjoying the video so far, you should be sure to press the like button and let us know in the comments section down below which NFL player you would like to see next. We post documentary-style content a few times a week and would love your support to hit 1,000 subscribers this year. Outside of the sport of football, Doug is married to his third wife, Rhonda. They have 8 children together and currently reside in the Washington, D.C. area. Their children have made sure to continue the good legacy of the Williams name by being highly educated and contributing to society with their respective work. Overall, he not only has added to the game of football, but contributed worthwhile people to society as a father as well. Williams is most celebrated for breaking racial barriers in a position that, at the time, was largely dominated by white players. As the first African-American quarterback to start and win a Super Bowl, and notably to be named Super Bowl MVP, he shattered the prevailing stereotype that African-American quarterbacks could not lead their teams to the ultimate NFL success. This victory in Super Bowl 22 was a watershed moment, proving that talent knows no color and paving the way for future generations of quarterbacks of all races. After his playing days, Williams continued to impact the NFL through his roles in coaching and front office positions. He has been a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion within the league, using his platform to promote opportunities for minority coaches and executives. His efforts contribute to the ongoing conversation about equality and representation in sports. In his post-playing career, Williams has also been instrumental in developing young talent, both in his executive roles with NFL teams and through his involvement in college football. His commitment to mentorship and development reflects his broader impact on the sport, extending his influence to the next generation of players and coaches. Williams shattered deep-seated stereotypes, challenging and ultimately changing perceptions about the capabilities of Black quarterbacks. His remarkable journey, marked by overcoming adversity, discrimination, and contractual disputes, serves as an inspiring testament to determination and excellence. Beyond his playing career, Williams' impact extends through his advocacy for diversity, mentorship, and his role in fostering opportunities for minorities in football. His story is not just one of personal achievement, but a beacon of progress, embodying the ongoing struggle for equality and representation in sports and beyond, making him a transformative figure in NFL history. That is going to complete this video. If you enjoyed, please press the like button and let us know what other players and stories you would like to see videos on down below. Our last video was a documentary about Rich Eisen, and if you want to watch it, you can click the video on screen now.